Welcome to Challenging Conversations, Tackling Taboo Topics. And today our taboo topic is menopause, a weighty matter. And we are so excited because we have a guest expert, Dr. Susan Baumgartel, who is a leading expert. She's been listed as a top doc in America, top doc all through the Seattle region. She's been a clinical assistant professor at University of Washington. She's the founder of Menopause Menu and also now My MD Advocate, making herself really a pioneer in this field as a physician advocate and a guide and a navigator and coach. So I'm going to let's start the conversation and see what we can learn from Dr. B.
Oh, Susan, we're so happy you're here. I'm ecstatic over this topic, even though I am menopause. I'm in menopause and have been for a while. But the road to menopause has been described as very chaotic. And from perimenopause to premenopause to menopause transition. And our society, women get dismissed a lot. They get labeled as you're a hypochondriac, you're what do I want to say? They minimize the symptoms and they say you're hysterical and all of that. So my burning question right now is, what are some of the things, but top three, if you can give those, that you wish women knew about menopause?
Well, first of all, thank you, Colleen and Maureen, and I know Kathleen is somewhere else today, but thank you for having me. I'm just delighted, and I must say this is such a near and dear topic to me in so many ways. I've been a physician for, 28, almost 30 years. And naturally, a lot of women see me and have seen me over time. And probably I cannot remember a single day going by when I didn't talk to a woman about menopause. And, I would say that this is a natural, and I hate to use that word natural, but this is a natural life journey. This is what, anyone with 2 ovaries and uterus, or even if you don't have a uterus anymore, but this is what we women go through. And I think that there are kind of some misnomers or misunderstandings, like what is menopause? And I always like to start with a couple definitions because I think it gets everyone on the same page. So a minute ago, Colleen just said you're in menopause. You're actually post-menopause.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. So, pre means before. So pre-menopause obviously is the years before you go into menopause. Peri means around, like perimeter. Peri is around the time of menopause. It could be kind of like before you're not quite sure you're going through it, or maybe you're in it, or you're not quite sure. Menopause is that time frame during which your hormones are dropping, a lot of other things are happening. And the true definition of kind of having been there, done that is 12 months without a period, technically. And then post-menopause, post means after. Post-menopause is everything else after menopause. And this is where the misnomer comes in. I've talked to, let's say, patients of mine who are like 70, like, oh, I'm not there. It's like you're post-menopause till you die. So, the post-menopausal period is after menopause. And that's often where, a lot of the good stuff comes in terms of, chronic disease prevention and symptom management. It's not just, before you go through menopause. So I think that's the first thing I think that would be good for everyone to know about in terms of the definitions. The second really is, this is not a life sentence. There's an end. I've so many women who have said, oh my God, it was 8 years of hell. And others like, oh, really? It was 3 months. And then poof, I was done. They're probably getting punched in their face by their girlfriends. So it's anything and everything. It's a chapter in our life. I find it, it's many refer to this phase as midlife. It's an avenue to the next chapter. So it's not forever. And many women have some very tough times with symptoms, but that's not forever. And I think that's the second kind of point I would make. The third thing is, I guess, which is why we're here. I think we should all feel more comfortable talking about symptoms and about our concerns. Dare I say that if you look back even to the 1950s, but gosh, modern times are catching up again. We don't necessarily have the framework or the space or the comfort level with talking about some of these things, especially when it comes to seeing your doctor or kind of going in for your appointment. Who just whips out like, oh, I have vaginal dryness, or like, I have no sex drive. Right? Those aren't things that necessarily many people feel comfortable talking about, or they're either dismissed or minimized, or like, oh, just go to this website as if that fixes your life. So again, it's the fact that we're able to navigate this discussion. It kind of falls into this, challenging conversations, is really important. That, hey, it's time. There's a lot more information available and a lot more venues for women to get, women and men to get good, solid advice.
That's so good. You'd said about the women are afraid to ask these questions. Well, I had a male gynecologist up until 2 years ago, and he was so great at answering all the questions and addressing everything. Now I go to a female primary care, not at all. And so it's really interesting. She just sort of glides over them. So that's really great information you just gave us. So what's the one mental health and physical health concern that you have for menopausal women?
Boy, there's like a million things. So I guess one thing that bubbles up to the surface when I think about mental health is kind of those hormone fluxes can really kind of bring out actual mental health disorders. So it's not just brain fog, which I can talk about in a minute, but sometimes it can unearth that someone does have depression or does have anxiety or maybe has PTSD, or the list goes on. And I think it can be a bit of an uncertainty to kind of ferret that out, because a very frequent complaint is brain fog. And I hear this almost bandied about like it's a Hollywood term, like, oh, it's a brain fog, but it really exists. It doesn't exist for all women, and it doesn't exist in the same way. And I think that's, it's really more a testament to the fact that menopause typically comes at a time in a woman's life where there are many things going on. They're like competing forces. It could be like a career change, or kids going through puberty or getting older, or maybe they're becoming empty nesters, or their parents are aging, or maybe there's an illness involved. And so all of these things wrapped up makes it a challenge, I think, in terms of adding to stress levels and how that impacts kind of our mental and kind of mental psyche. And that can be a bit undermined by the healthcare system when there's no time to talk about it, or there's very little access perhaps to someone who can help, coach you through that kind of phase. So that would be the mental kind of side of things. I guess if there's one physical thing I think about, I'm actually not thinking about symptoms. I'm thinking about, the fact that as you go through menopause and you're in the postmenopausal phase forever after that, it really opens the door to talking about preventive care and about screening. And I think that, again, women, for that reason I just mentioned, are busy dealing with all these other things going on. They often put their needs to the end, and there's no time in the day for them, right? So they're kind of on the back burner, when really we need to bring that to the forefront. There's a lot of ways we can reduce our risk for illness, be it osteoporosis or heart disease or cancer or diabetes and so forth, and also a way to kind of diagnose things early. So I think that is a very important thing to know about menopause, because we tend to focus on all the symptoms early on, like the hot flashes and the night sweats and all those things, when really, a big important topic is chronic illness and kind of staying healthy.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was one of my questions, is that, many times a woman will present with symptoms, that show they're going into menopause. And if the doctor or the physician just dismisses it, they may be missing something entirely different that presents similar. So I'm really glad you addressed that, because I think women need to know that too,
Yeah. I mean, frankly, not that I'm going to dwell on cancer today, but, night sweats or hot flashes and then some weight changes and a couple other symptoms. Hey, we got to screen for lymphoma, not to scare people, but there's there's a reason not to just brush things off. And it goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, being comfortable talking about these things and being able to have the time to negotiate a dialogue with whoever's caring for you is so key. I mean, we're not second place anymore. You know, women's healthcare is up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, that brings me to this question of what are the key components that would support all women going through menopause? What, you know, we need this support. If we're getting dismissed, we need something here.
Yeah. Well, you know, it goes without saying, I think access. Before we went live, we were talking about access in terms of like through telemedicine and how it could reach certain populations, even perhaps those who are less served or underserved. You know, I don't want to paint a stereotypic picture, but when you think about a woman who's busy, perhaps they're in a relationship, perhaps they have kids, perhaps they have a job full time, perhaps they have, you know, older parents. And do they have time to go to the doctor? You know, so I mean, I'm laughing, but this is the truth. And so having access to medical care, I think, is one of the best ways you can support anyone who's kind of going through this process, because they almost end up trivial. Oh, well, this is silly. I'm not going in for that. You know, I put on 10 pounds. Hey, well, that's my fault. I mean, I'm having ice cream, but you know, gosh, maybe they're diabetic and they need to be screened for that. So having us realize we are worth it. It's worthwhile to bring those issues and to have access to medical care and of course, preventive care. I also think that a little understanding goes a long way in terms of other people in our lives who support us. So the more information we share or learn about, and you're talking about my website, Menopause Menu, you know, I perhaps need to rebrand because it looks like it's only for women, it's for anybody, because, you know, maybe your partner wants to understand, like, why are you so grouchy? Or, you know, what's going on here? And so learning and understanding and sharing that knowledge, I think, is really important. This is not just a female topic. It's a society. It's an everything topic. I also think there's, you know, it's important to kind of debunk the myth about hormones. I think a lot of people feel that, you know, it's all or none, or that hormones are bad. You know, hormones are neither bad nor good. You know, they can be very helpful and life-saving, almost marriage-saving, who knows, for some women, and then they can completely, absolutely be the wrong thing for someone else. And so it's just, you know, it's like often automatically the conversation goes immediately to hormones. Like, oh, should I go on hormones? Like, well, that may not even be the conversation. Like, what's going on? Let's talk about this some more. So again, getting back to having the space for that. And then really the biggest tip I always give people is expect the unexpected, especially early on when you're not sure what's going on. You know, if you still have a uterus and your periods are going crazy, the first missed period, of course, everyone thinks they're pregnant. That's not good. And, you know, and then you just not sure, you just, is this normal? Is this not normal? And so understanding that even though there are a lot of commonalities to how women will journey through this perimenopause, menopause, each pathway is unique. And so it's nice to know you're not crazy and that this is okay and that the journey is to be expected.
I have a question. So how would you, I know your menopause menu is a great resource, but how would you encourage women to start these conversations with their healthcare providers? Because sometimes they just don't know how or which questions to ask. You mentioned like the night sweats and lymphoma. Well, being an oncology nurse, I always know that that is a sign of lymphoma, but most people don't. So how would you encourage people to start the conversation to get their doctors to listen?
Well, I'm going to answer that. There's so many ways I could answer that. That could be like an hour talk, but I'm going to answer that from a technology perspective, because we have the ability now. I hate to say it because it's the bane of many doctors' existence. You know, there's something called MyChart, or it's like patient, you know, basically it's like an email system within a medical record. You can kind of send messages. My opinion, even though it's not embraced by everyone, is that is the perfect opportunity to boom, 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 list your concerns ahead of your appointment, because then a good physician, not someone who's not really having the time or caring to listen, will use that as like a template before they walk in the room or do a virtual visit. They know what's on your mind. But the worst thing you can do is, let's say you're in your appointment and you're already going long and the doctor's hand's on the doorknob and you say, oh, by the way, I'm having hot flashes. Like, oh my gosh, go to this website. That's a blow off. So sharing your questions ahead of time can be very valuable, I think, and it sets the stage. And then, maybe there's some topics that need to be talked about in great detail, and maybe you just don't have time that day, but you're not blowing someone off. You're allowing them to be heard. And for the most part, in terms of how I ran my practice, I would go through all those things. And that's active listening.
I love that. It's something that I never thought of, and I was just on my chart today. So it's something that I will be doing before I go to a physician appointment. Thanks for that tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's another topic that comes up, the weighty topic, I'm going to call it, is, how do you approach people who feel there's no way around their weight gain during menopause? They just say, okay, I'm in menopause. Now I got this weight. I'm going to keep it forever.
Oh my gosh, my favorite topic that's not menopause is weight. So boom, they're together. There's so much there to unpack. I would say, just for the brevity of this program, I would really, really, really redefine what it means to lose weight. When someone has a weight management goal or a weight goal, I would sit down again, assuming you have a good rapport. It's not something you can just do in a survey. Really understand where they're coming from. Is this a lifelong problem that they have had trouble losing weight for 30 years? Or is it just because of menopause that they've gained 10 pounds? Or is it not weight at all? Maybe they have a body image issue and they do not like how they look. By the way, you can be stick thin and not like how you look too, and that gets into that kind of rabbit hole of, is there an eating disorder? Maybe it's the fact they don't feel like they have enough energy, or maybe they can't play with their grandkids because there's so much weight they can't really get down on the floor and play. And there's so many aspects to weight. I feel like if we can get away from that number on the scale defining the topic, the conversation, it would really do it justice, because really that's kind of where it comes back to. So I talk about focusing on, health, and not that actual number. Of course, what does health mean? It's like almost a throwaway term. There are many people who talk about, this famous, the pillars of weight management, the pillars of health. You could say there are 3 pillars. You could say there's 16 pillars. I kind of talk about 5 pillars. It's easier, but this is stuff that everyone knows. I mean, this is not rocket science. It's nutrition, it's exercise, it's stress management, it's sleep, it's good social networks. This, you can add to that in iterative fashion. But I think, picking apart the important aspects of all those is key. And so I do that with people because sometimes they tend to focus just on like pounding out at the gym, when that may not be actually as helpful. Or maybe they're just focused on what goes in their mouth, when actually that's the last thing maybe they need to be working on. I often move into that arena of stress management very quickly, because I happen to think without stress management, none of that really, materializes or you don't gain momentum. So getting into that kind of groove, and that could be difficult because not everyone is able to share what's going on with them, and sometimes it's really over a period of time you get to understand where they're coming from. So looking at those pillars, if you call it that, is key. And then I think, again, this is just kind of like a phrase I've said for so many years, looking at weight loss as a side effect of whatever you're doing. So if you're working on improved sleep, and you notice that maybe the next day your cravings are less, and maybe that you have better energy, and maybe that you're exercising in a different way, and maybe your mental outlook is better, and then maybe you're losing weight, focusing on that journey. So weight loss is a side effect, instead of like, okay, I need to lose my 3 pounds. There's one thing I've said, again, that people who know me will chuckle, because it's really true. If someone's coming to me in the office and they get on that famous scale, and frankly, that's a whole other discussion if we should weigh people all the time, but whatever. But let's say they get on their scale at home and they say, oh, I've gained 3 pounds. And like, why should that make them so bitter and angry, like the day is ruined? Or conversely, oh my God, I lost 3 pounds. Like, I'm just killing it. Why should losing 3 pounds make them elated and joyful? So getting away from that number can actually get you into a much better groove and achieve your goal in a much healthier way. And yes, we're not looking for quick fixes, we're looking for long term. And so I think that that's kind of the secret sauce that I like to put on.
That's so great. What do you wish you knew, or your mother knew, or your teens knew? Or what do you wish we all knew about menopause that we don't know? You're educating us so much, and I have more questions. But
I'm delighted. I think, there's a famous author, I won't quote, who is a physician, who wrote, I believe, menopause is like puberty backwards. I hardly disagree with that. There are many similarities. There are hormone shifts and teenage acne and menopausal acne, but it's really not. There's so many nuances, and I think that it's the nuanced process, that journey, which is kind of unique for most people going through it, that needs to be addressed. So I think that's important. You can't just look at a textbook and say, oh, that's what I should be doing. There's no shoulda, coulda, woulda. I also think, and this is my bias because I've been there, done that now, that once you're in that postmenopausal phase, you kind of look back, they always say, hindsight's 2020, that there's a lot of wisdom to be gained, a lot of wisdom to be found in midlife. I'll call this midlife. And I think that is so powerful. That can kind of filter into so many different aspects of your life, be it a personal relationship or your job or how you look at politics or, just your health goals. And so you kind of harnessing that wisdom is key. And that kind of, to me, that means that you really have learned or are still learning about your own body. You're learning about self-care. And, frankly, there's less of that when you're younger because, the world's your oyster. I also think, getting back to a topic we talked about at the beginning, that there's less support, perhaps. There's like a zillion resources for new moms or, having a baby or, breastfeeding or whatever it is, but there's less of a consensus, if I use that word, for women going through menopause and then in postmenopause and aging. And so it breaks apart. So I think, in a way, trusting your newfound wisdom, learning to kind of understand your body signals, learning about self-care. Those are the things that I think if we knew ahead of time, we could maybe relax a little bit and say, this process, we're going through is natural and we will get through it. And maybe hooking up with the right people along the way to navigate certain parts of that is useful, but to be less kind of like, oh, I'm having a hot flash, well, that's probably the worst way to deal with a hot flash.
My friend that walks around with a little portable battery operator.
I was going to say, my fan.
You have just addressed so many topics, and there's so many more, but I think one that we don't think of as women is how it impacts us at work. But it's something that's not talked about. And how would you address that, the work impact of menopause? Because it's a lot of us work in a male's world, or people just don't want to talk about it. What do you mean you have brain fog?
This is karma happening right now, everybody. This is making me tingly because I've been writing a book called The Menopause Mosaic, and I'm on a chapter about this very topic. So I'm writing about this. And I was sitting back thinking wow, again, we all have different journeys, but how does it play out in the workplace? And I think so much of it is hidden. Think about people, not me, but think about people who don't have access to a bathroom when they need it. They can't just oh, I'll be right back. I have to go to the bathroom. Maybe they're in a position where they get certain breaks and that's it. That's not going to go well. They have massive, 3-week long heavy periods with heavy clots that they think they're soaking through their pants. That could be an aspect sometimes of perimenopause. That's an issue. So embarrassment and oh my gosh, how do I get to the bathroom? Or you're dressed, you feel like you want to rip your clothes off and you're dripping wet and you have stains under your, that can be embarrassing for many. So how do you, of course, dress in layers, but you can't walk everywhere with a fan. Not everyone can personalize their workspace. So that's an absolutely legitimate question. Does it mean you stay at home? Oh, for God's sake, no. But it means that we have to promote workplaces that are flexible, that are, kind of human in that sense. And even though I know you kind of pause for a second about, it's a man's world, it's not a man's world, but I know what you're saying in terms of the typical hierarchy, the top down, C-suite and so forth. Yes, we women are getting everywhere, but truthfully, that gets back to lack of understanding. And if we shared this knowledge and other people, not just women, but the men in our lives understood this and really understood the flavor and nature of that, I think things would be a lot easier. And so I'm going to leave it at that because there's probably a lot more I could go
There
on
probably
about.
is, as the mother of 3 sons with no sisters, I wanted them to know what girls go through, what teenage girls go through. And then what I was going through as I was journeying through this, and they were probably thinking, TMI, mom, TMI, but they heard it anyway, because I always wanted them to understand. I grew up with brothers, I had a sister. So, we understood each other for the most part, but I think it's just so important to talk about, to talk about with our family members, our kids, our coworkers, if we're struggling, to let them know that we're struggling right now, or this is a hard week. And that the more we can talk about it, the more empathy maybe we can have.
I'm kind of getting glassy eyed because I'm thinking about in the past when I was young, and what powers above made your daughter go through puberty the same time you were probably going through menopause. I mean, that's just not fair. And so our kids, or when you were a child, you probably didn't know what your mom was going through. First of all, no one talked about it. I mean, for God's sake, it was not a conversation. And so that makes me a little sad, because this is generational work. We're hopefully catching up to the fact that it's maybe not even going to be on your show because it won't be taboo anymore. It's not like a topic that should be labeled. Oh, well, let's not talk about that. And I do think educating people around you is so key, and making them feel comfortable asking questions is very key too.
Yes.
I think, this brings up flashbacks of in junior high, when all of a sudden one day this gush came, and I don't think I totally knew what it was. And when I went home, the only thing I got was not an explanation, but here are the products you use. And that was it.
Yeah.
And that's sad when you think of it. I think it would have been an opportunity for my mother, a different generation, granted. But to say, hey, I'm going through this, and this is the beginning, and let's talk about it. No.
We've come a long way, baby. I know that's an advertisement for a product that I shouldn't advertise, but it's really, really almost a sense of palpable relief that we have so many venues now that we can talk about intimacy or vaginal dryness and libido and genital urinary changes and all those things that, oh my gosh, I just said those words. This is okay that we can talk about those in the context of what's happening in this perimenopausal and postmenopausal journey.
Yeah. Well, Susan, thank you so much for this rich conversation that could have gone on much longer. So we'll have to have you back for menopause round 2. And but tell us how people can meet or can reach you.
How can we reach you?
How can they get
so I have 2 websites. One is Menopause Menu, all one word, menopausemenu.com. And that is a free informational website for everyone. It's like a library. So under the information tab, there are 16 different topics. I probably could have put 25. I add blogs to it, but really there's a lot of meaty topics under info. And that's really to share for everyone. And then I have an actual business, which is called My MD Advocate. And My MD Advocate it's actually virtual, so telemedicine. And sorry for folks who don't live here, but it's only if you're residing in Washington State. And I I take care of so many different things, not just menopause. I take care of men and women. A lot of it's aging and age-related and complex medical problems, pain management, chronic illness, navigating the system. So the sky's the limit. But it's just been really a pleasure to have this service now and to help people in this new venue.
Now, I just want to say, I know Susan. I mean, I was a patient of hers for years before she made this final transition, and she is really one of the best physicians I've ever had, and she's a marvelous speaker. She really opened the world up for all of her patients. So I just want to give you that kudos, Susan, because you've done so much for people. And this time has gone really fast. I can't believe it. So we are win-win women, and our show is Challenging Conversations. And if you go to our Facebook page, you will find us under Challenging Conversations. And what we like most is for you to give us topics that you think should be talked about. Not necessarily, we use the word taboo, but there's many things people have difficulty talking about. And here's a show we can do that with. So let us know what you want to talk about. And we're here every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And next week, I don't want to forget this, next week, we're going to be talking about trauma and grief. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.